Hey everybody, to start this module out, I just want to go through a little presentation that I often do in person, helping people understand what qualitative data analysis software is and what it can do for you. And so, as you know, in all good research, qualitative research studies, it's important to talk about positionality. And so, I did not use qualitative data analysis software myself until after I got tenure. I did not learn it as part of my doctoral work. And I would consider myself a late adopter, and that's a term from diffusion of innovation theory. I'm not the first person in line at the Apple store when a new product comes out. Those are the early adopters. Um, I'm really aware that there's a high learning curve, a steep learning curve when you're adopting new technology, and new tools always change your practice, and that takes a lot of time. So I really have to be convinced that it's worth my time before I start to learn it. And so I think, in large part, that's why I teach this class, is because I want you to be exposed to it and know about it sooner rather than later, so you don't have your entire research process in place without the tools and then have to figure out how to introduce them later. You and your colleagues as students expect to learn how to use technologies in your work. So as a professor, I've been challenged to integrate software. I personally use Atlas TI. That's only because when I was at Tennessee first learning how to use software, that's what my colleagues used. And so you're generally going to use whatever other people use so that you've got someone to help you. We did not have a site license for the software at the time, and neither did Georgia, but I did advocate for a site license, and so the College of Ed does offer you a license for Atlas TI or in Vivo now, so you should be sure to get that if you don't have it already. I've also done methodological research into using QDA software. I'm particularly interested in how to use that software to do language-based analytic work like conversation, narrative, and discourse analysis. Atlas TI does not pay me to promote their product. I have done trainings in the past that's been paid for by institutions. I am a certified trainer. And again, I have written the book that we're using in this class. So I do have somewhat of a vested interest in being sure that people understand how to use the tools that are available to them. I think sadly it's important to start by talking about what software does not do, because some of your professors, senior scholars, people who don't know or haven't used the tools, they have a lot of misconceptions about QDA software. It does not analyze the data for you, which you may be happy to hear or disappointed to hear. It's just a tool to help you analyze the data. It doesn't take control of your analysis process. It doesn't force you to quantify your data or decontextualize your data. It does whatever you tell it to do, really. It doesn't necessarily make your analysis process faster or easier, though I would argue that it does make it more powerful. It doesn't force you to do anything to your data that you don't want it to do. There seems to be this idea that if you put your data into a software program that it's going to suddenly take control. To me, that's as silly as thinking that just because you're using a word processor, it's somehow taking control of your writing and you should keep writing by hand. It does not support only one kind of analysis. There's been a persistent misconception that software only supports grounded theory. That's not true. And it doesn't distance you from your data any more than using a word processor distances you from your writing. I mean, we all use computers for everything. Why would we not use them for analyzing qualitative data? I would argue, and I have argued many times, that using a software package makes your research process more transparent, because you have to document all of the choices that you're making in your analysis. It's right there. It's visible in the software for everyone to see exactly what codes you used, what the codes mean, and where you attach the codes to the data. It makes your process more portable. You can send your advisor a file of all of your analysis and they can look at it, whereas you would not normally come to your advisor's office with stacks and stacks of paper that you've highlighted and cut apart. It makes it easier to collaborate because you can do your analysis, send me your project file, I can add my analysis, and we can combine them. And it makes it much more systematic because, again, you are documenting everything that you're doing in a way that's very visible to others. And I think that's actually a threat to some qualitative researchers, and that's why they don't want to use it, because in some ways they're worried about making it visible. You'll see here links to the big three packages, which are Atlas TI, NVivo, and Max QDA. Atlas TI and Max QDA are based in Germany. Germany. Atlas does have a North American office in Corvallis, Oregon. In Vivo is based in Australia but has a very strong American presence, and I would argue In Vivo is the most commercial and corporate. They really do run their business like a business. Deduce is based in the States at UCLA. It's cloud-based. It's very affordable because they only charge you, I think it's now $13 a month for the months that you use the product. And because it's in the cloud, you can actually collaborate more easily with others. But they're really marketing themselves as a mixed methods evaluation tool. So it is a little bit different in its functionality from the other three. And then Quarkos is the newcomer on the scene. Daniel Turner and his colleagues created it. They're up in Scotland, and they are really trying to make it a very streamlined, simple tool that doesn't do a lot of the more complex features, but might be perfectly appropriate if you're getting started. So here are 10 things that QDA software helps you do. It gives you what's called, what Konopashek has called a textual laboratory. Your software is your laboratory where you organize your data and all kinds of data, from text data to images to video to social media, and also other project documents. You can keep your data collection forms there, your IRB forms, descriptions of your project, emails that you send with your collaborators. It's all right there, so you're not shuffling through lots of paper or folders on your desk. It can support you in conducting a literature review. When you think about it, a literature review is qualitative data analysis, and so it makes sense to use this tool for that. You can use it to transcribe. You can upload your audio or video files, synchronize the transcript so that you can click on any part of the transcript and listen to the data again, which is quite a powerful feature. You can write up field notes while you're at your research site and have them all within the software. You can keep all of your notes from meetings, your own reflections, your collaboration notes with your team. You can keep all of that in the software. Before you start analysis, it's important to memo and really just think about and reflect on what you're seeing in the data before you create your analytic categories. You can do all of that with the memo features. You can visualize relationships using network views in Atlas TI. You can visualize by creating a graphical display either between sources of data, within a source of data, or between the data and the literature. You can do simple searches and more powerful searches of your data. Then, of course, you can engage in analysis, which a lot of you think of as coding, but doesn't have to be coding. It's a way that you're interpreting your data. And then once you've done all of that, you're basically you're creating a database, which you can then interrogate and do some pretty powerful searches of your data based on your coding categories. And then finally, you can write your entire report and all of your findings in the software. So you're going to be learning more about this in this module, but these are just some screenshots to kind of illustrate what I mean. And these are from Atlas TI, which is supported at UGA, and it's what I use, but just know that Max QDA and In Vivo really do the same thing. In Vivo has been around for a long time and it's pretty powerful, but it's also, I would argue, maybe not that intuitive to use. It does follow the Microsoft Windows interface design, for better or for worse. Max QDA, people have argued, is the easiest to learn, and one huge advantage Max QDA has, especially in the States where so many people use Mac and Apple products, is that it has a native Mac PC platform that looks exactly the same across both and functions across both. So if you're collaborating with people, one's Mac, one's Windows, or if you're just a Mac user, you're probably going to find Max QDA to be the best choice for you. So what do I mean by textual laboratory? Well, this is just a screenshot from a study that we recently published on GoFundMe sites looking at crowdsourcing and how people construct their requests for financial support for medical expenses. In this country, health insurance and getting good health coverage is an issue, and so we were interested in how, when people decided to put medical campaigns online asking for funding, how they constructed people as worthy of their support. So you can see here the document manager in Atlas TI, where we've got all different types of documents here: images, videos, the actual PDFs themselves. It all can be right here. And so you've got your documents, and then you can code and analyze the data, which shows up, the codes show up on the right. When I talk about conducting a literature review, you can just upload PDFs of your literature and then just go ahead and create codes based on what you're looking for in the literature review. And in this example, we were looking at articles that used conversation analysis to as a method to analyze computer-mediated communication data, CMC. So we looked at all the literature to look at the context of the data, the type of data, the date the articles were published, which conversation analysis features were being looked at, the discipline of the journal, the location of the authors. We were looking at all sorts of things. And so you'll see here that, we were able to, when we were interested in looking at the context of the studies, we could pull up all of the articles in the literature that were looking at language learning, and there were 6 quotations, and we could easily pull those up with the click of a button and start writing our literature review from there. In terms of transcribing, Atlas 7 supported transcription, and we're waiting for it to be a part of Atlas 8. But all of the big packages basically let you upload the media file, and you can see the waveform on the right. You can type up your transcription of that file, and then the red dots are called timestamps, and by clicking on the timestamp in your transcript, it will take you to that part of the data so that you can actually listen to it or watch it again. And when you think about data, it's really how things are said and it's the recording itself that's the data and important, not just the paper transcript. So we're used to just transcribing, throwing out the audio recording, and analyzing paper. This makes it much more powerful and easier to stay close to the data by actually clicking and listening to the data again. In terms of capturing field notes, you can just take your laptop or iPad into the field and type up field notes as a memo in these software packages so that you actually have your reflections and your field notes right in the data. So that's a really great feature as well. Keeping a research journal, again, I have an entire memo group on analytic notes, meeting summaries with my collaborators, possible findings and interpretations. And so in the software, you can just keep all of your notes here so that as you're analyzing data, you can revisit them quite quickly. Memos are a powerful tool for annotating your data as well. So here you see this is one of the GoFundMe campaigns that we were looking at. As we were reading it, we didn't jump straight to coding. We just started narrating and interpreting what was happening in these GoFundMe campaigns. We're noticing that basically there's a life story that's being told, and you're always talking about why the person has merit and why they're a great, amazing person and should be funded for their health care. So we could capture all of that in a memo before we even got to codes. Once we wrote up those narratives and those memos as to what was going on, you can create a visual display where if you think more visually with post-it notes on a wall, you can do that in the software. And so here we were trying to kind of map out what is happening in those medical campaigns. The campaigns are often written by a third party. There's a crisis narrative in terms of what happened to that person. That person is constructed as very worthy and a good member of the community deserving of your support. Usually the medical condition is constructed as very extreme and rare, and it could not have been anticipated. Positive outcome, no matter how dire the circumstances are, a positive outcome is positioned so that your investment is going to pay off in terms of this person's going to continue to live, blah, blah, blah. So we just mapped out our whole argument or structure of the data using the visualization tool. But before you even get to that point, you may just want to do some initial searches of your data. So we were just looking up cancer. Maybe we want to narrow our GoFundMe requests to those that are looking for support for cancer. So you can just do a search of your data and all of those parts of the data will come up, which gives you a nice overview of the data. You can also generate a word cloud. And then when you're ready to code, here on the bottom right is the code manager where you can color code the codes. You can create code groups in a way to organize your code. And then of course you attach the code to the data. And that's kind of what most people think about when they think about QDA software. And then you can interrogate that data set and find all of the quotes, for example, that had two of the codes and where they overlap or co-occur. So you can look for co-occurrences, which might give you some interesting insights. And then all of those show up down here. And then with a simple click, it'll take you back into the full data and you can read some more. You can also construct queries. So we were interested in the gender of the person who was in need. And whether or not that was connected to a description of what the money was going to be used for in the request itself. So we were able to search and run a query on that. So that's another powerful tool. And then finally, once you have all of your data coded, you can simply run a quotation report where it will pull all of those parts of the data that's coded in this case with crisis narrative, and then you can cut and paste this into a Word document or the memo feature of the software and just start writing up that section of the findings, which is much easier than having to flip through paper-based data and find all the green highlighted text, for example. So there's more. You can link this with Google Earth and mapping software if you're doing that kind of an analysis. You can import Excel spreadsheets and survey data if you want to analyze, for example, open-ended responses to a survey. You can import Twitter data. Atlas TI has an iPad app that you can use to collect data and then import it into the software on your desktop. You can synchronize this with Evernote if you happen to be an Evernote user. And then you can also import files right from your citation management software, Zotero, Mendeley, in order to do analysis for your literature review. And it also supports working in teams. So in conclusion, I would argue that you should be using software, but there are some factors that may affect whether or not you decide to do that. Access, you do have a site license, but if you didn't, you might not. But we do here at Georgia now. And also, I always recommend using more than one monitor because these software packages are complex and you're going to want to be able to move things to different monitors. Hopefully, you feel like you have enough support here at Georgia. You know, you're getting some training in this class, you're meeting other students who are using similar software, so you're developing a community of practice. The COE does provide some tech support, and so do I. You do need time, which is one reason I'm glad that you're taking this class, which gives yourself some time to learn the tools. And then you may find that you're more of a resistor than an early adopter, and that's fine. But at least you'll know that you've given it a shot. So here's some recommended reading if you're interested in learning more, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with.